Rain slammed against the glass like bullets. Sarah wasn't supposed to be here. Her hands trembled as she shoved the keycard into the slot. The little light blinked red. 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 Come on, she whispered. She tried again. Green light. Click. The door swung open. She stepped inside and froze because someone was already there. A man stood across the room, half naked, water still dripping from his chest, the city's neon light carving him in golden shadow. Black ink tattoos crawled across his shoulders and down both arms like something alive, like a map of every violent decision he'd ever made. And in his right hand, a gun, not raised, not shaking, just resting there, the way someone holds a pen when they're used to signing things with permanent consequences. His eyes found hers in the dark. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply looked at her with the flat, patient stillness of a man who had never once needed to raise his voice to become the most dangerous thing in any room. Then, close the door. Low, quiet, final. Not a request, not a threat. Just the truth of what happened next if she didn't. Sarah's breath disappeared. She closed the door. Good, he said. Now. You have 3 seconds to explain why you're in my room. A pause. Before I assume you came here to die. Her mouth opened. Nothing useful came out. The key card, she started. 1. The front desk gave me. 2. It's the wrong room, she snapped. Silence. He didn't move. His eyes traveled, slowly, deliberately, from her rain-soaked hair to the mascara dried in streaks down her cheeks, to her shaking hands, to the luggage tag on her carry-on, into the hotel envelope still crumpled in her left fist. He lowered the gun, not because he believed her, because he was still deciding. Come here, he said. Absolutely not, Sarah said. Something flickered in his expression. Not anger. Something more unsettling. Interest. I said come here. And I said no. Her voice shook, but her eyes stayed on his. I don't know who you are. I don't care who you are. The hotel gave me the wrong key card. I walked into the wrong room, and I'm leaving right now. She turned toward the door. Room 4014, he said. She stopped. That's what's on your envelope. You're in 4140. She stared at the door handle. Didn't touch it. The numbers were transposed, he said. Common mistake for people who read quickly. I'm not a foreigner, she said without turning. I'm Nigerian American. I read fine. Then you read wrong. She spun around. You ask a lot of questions for someone holding a gun. His head tilted, barely a degree. That flicker again, sharper this time. Sit down, Miss Clarke, Sarah Clarke. Ms. Clarke. He said it the way you enter a name into a permanent record. She sat down, not because she was afraid, she was absolutely, but because something in his voice told her this was a man who did not ask twice and did not forget once. He made one call, half in Korean, voice completely flat. When he hung up, he adjusted his shirt cuff once, a small automatic gesture, before looking back at her. Your room is 4014. Keycard error. The front desk agent has been spoken to. Great, she stood. Then I'll go. In a moment. She exhaled hard. What now? He studied her. She studied him back, because she was done being the only person in the room who felt exposed. The jaw cut from something harder than patience. Water still on his shoulders. The tattoos she hadn't meant to memorize but already had. You've been crying, he said. That's none of your business. High floor suite. Last-minute booking, no luggage beyond a carry-on. Rain. He adjusted his cuff again. Either you're running from something or towards something. Which is it? Running, she said before she could stop herself. Then she straightened. Still not your business. No, he agreed. A knock at the door. He crossed the room without hurrying, opened it 2 inches, listened, closed it. When he turned back, something in his face had changed. Not much, just enough. Your business partner, he said. Is her Daniel Yoon? The name hit her like a slap. Don't, she said quietly. Your showcase ended early tonight. Stop! Why? Her hands balled into fists. She was not going to cry in front of this man. She was not going to give this cold, calculating stranger that. Because, she said, voice controlled, I walked into my own event and found my fiancé with his face in my business partner's neck, in the room I reserved for my collection reveal. She smiled, the kind that didn't reach anything. Happy? You have the full story. Anything else before I leave? He looked at her for a long moment. No, he said. He stepped aside. She walked past him. She could feel the cold he carried. Physical, like standing near open water at night. She opened the door. Ms. Clarke. She stopped. Didn't look back. The kitchen closes at midnight, he said. She gets 11:48. If you've eaten nothing since this morning, and I suspect you haven't, you have 12 minutes. She left without answering, but she stopped at the elevator and pressed the button for the restaurant floor. If you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now because stories like this one can only be found on this channel. Now let's get into it. His name was Han Joon-Seok. If you ask the business world, he was the CEO of JH Capital Group, a private investment firm that moved money through real estate, tech infrastructure, and entertainment across Southeast Asia. 41 floors of clean glass and wire transfers. If you ask the right people, the ones who spoke in quiet rooms and never wrote anything down, he was something else entirely. The man who controlled the financial arteries of 3 criminal networks across East Asia without appearing in a single police file. Not because he was careless, because he was precise, because he had learned long ago that the most dangerous kind of power was the kind that looked like nothing at all. He stood at his window after she left and turned her name over in his mind. Clarke. He made a second call. Key, the woman who just left my floor, he said in Korean. Find everything connected to the name Clarke in Daniel Yoon's files. He hung up, then stood there a moment longer than necessary, which was unusual for him. He moved to the side table, picked up the gun. The familiar weight, cold, exact, honest in a way very little else in his life was. He turned it once in his hand, set it down, because for the first time in years, something in his life felt harder to control than violence. A woman with mascara-streaked cheeks had argued with him at gunpoint and held his gaze the entire time. Everyone in his world performed. He could see the architecture of every conversation before it ended. She had just been there, present, furious, real. She's a loose end, he told himself. Find out what she knows and let her go. He almost believed that. He picked up his phone and made a third call. Daniel Yoon's current legal filings. Everything. Tonight. Sarah ate alone at 3 minutes to midnight. Soup, bread, a wine she didn't finish, phone face down. She let herself feel the full weight of the evening. Marcus's face when she'd walked in. Not guilt, barely surprise. Like he'd been waiting for her to find out so he could stop the work of hiding it. 4 years. Her phone buzzed. Front desk. We've upgraded your room to a junior suite on the 38th floor at no additional charge. Then another message. Unknown number. Room 3814 is quieter. Better view of the Han River. She stared, then typed, How do you have this number? 4 seconds, the same way I know you prefer window seats. She typed, Are you watching me? I'm making sure you're safe. Different thing. It's not. You're in my hotel. Ms. Clarke, my building, my staff. Your hotel? No reply. She finished her soup and went to bed. She woke to 3 quiet taps. 7:14 a.m., a breakfast tray, a folded note. Your showcase photos are online. They're good. The midnight blue dress is particularly strong. Don't let last night convince you otherwise. H. She stood in the middle of the room holding a note from a half-naked man with a gun and tattoos who apparently monitored Nigerian-American fashion designers online. What is happening to me, she thought. She ate breakfast anyway. She should have checked out. Instead, she opened her sketchbook, ordered a second coffee, didn't move for 3 hours. By noon, 3 new pieces, raw and electric in a way her work hadn't been in months. Something about the previous night had cracked something open. All that fear and fury and standing in front of a man with a gun and refusing to fold. At 1:30 p.m., a knock. Han Joon-Seok, black suit, no tie. hands in his pockets. He adjusted his left cuff once before looking at her. That small, automatic gesture she was already starting to recognize. "You're still here," he said. "Technically, you upgraded me. I didn't say leave. You didn't say stay either. I'm saying it now." She crossed her arms. "Why would I do that?" He glanced past her, at the sketchbook, the pencils, the designs she'd covered badly with her hand. Because you're working," he said. "I'd hate to interrupt that." "You interrupted it by knocking. I'll knock better next time. What do you actually want, Mr. Han?" "Lunch, private dining room on 41. "Your floor?" "Yes, with the gun. In a drawer." Still not reassuring. "Ms. Clarke," he said, "I've had 40 minutes of meetings, 3 calls with people who would prefer I was dead, and a disagreement with my head of security I don't intend to explain. I want one conversation that has nothing to do with money or violence." She hadn't expected the directness, the absence of performance. "And you want that conversation with me? You're the only person in this building who isn't afraid of me. I was absolutely afraid of you last night." "Past tense," he noted. Another small adjustment of his cuff. She looked at him for a moment. "Give me 10 minutes, and she said. The private dining room was warm and small. Low table by the window, real plants, food already laid out, Korean dishes, and jollof rice. The good kind. Smoky bottom layer, everything right. She looked at him. "My chef researched it," he said simply. "You told your chef to research jollof rice." He said it turned out well. She tried a spoonful. "Excellent." "Tell him he passed," she said. Something almost like a real smile moved across his face. Brief, gone quickly, but real while it lasted. They ate. He asked about her work with the precise curiosity of someone who read between lines as naturally as breathing. She found herself talking about the midnight blue dress, the 3 years sourcing the exact thread weight, the way the fabric caught light. What happened to it after last night?" he asked. "Still at the venue? Probably being packed up." She paused. "Or Daniel is selling access to it to recoup what the showcase cost." "He wouldn't." "You don't know Daniel." "I know his type." She looked up. "What type?" "The kind who takes credit for things that aren't his," he said, "and gets away with it for years because the person doing the actual work is too focused to notice." The table went quiet. "That's specific," she said. "Common story." "Is it yours?" "Parts of it." She wanted to push further. She could feel the edge of something real behind his composure. But his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His face went still. He adjusted his cuff without looking down. "I need to end lunch," he said. "Okay. Stay in the hotel today." She frowned. "Why?" "Because I'm asking you to." "That's not a reason. It's a preference," she said. "Give me an actual reason." He looked at her, and there it was, a flash of something. Not irritation exactly, something closer to surprise, like he wasn't used to being pushed back on the small things. "There are people near this building today I don't want near you. And if I decide that's not enough reason, then you'll find out why it is," he said. "The hard way. That's a threat. It's a fact." He held her gaze. "Sarah, please." The please landed differently than everything else, like it cost him something to produce it. She nodded. He left. She stared at the door for a long moment after it closed, feeling the specific frustration of a person who had just been managed. Expertly, almost gently. And couldn't fully object to it. Almost. And she thought, almost. She went to the rooftop pool at 9 p.m. Supposed to be closed. Door was unlocked. She pushed through into cool night air and city glow and heard voices before she saw anyone. Low. Korean. From the shadow of the service stairwell. She should have turned around. She moved along the wall instead. 3 men. 2 she didn't recognize. And Joon-Seok, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking at a third man who was older, shorter, visibly shaking. "I trusted you with one thing," Joon-Seok said. His voice was different now. Not the lunchroom. Not the man who'd said please like it cost him something. This was the thing underneath all of that. Flat. Absolute. A voice that had already decided and was simply narrating the outcome. "I'm sorry," the older man said. "I didn't. You passed a route to the Shin group. That route had 3 of my people on it. I didn't know. You knew exactly what would happen. The man sobbed. Then, desperate, wild, he looked past Joon-Seok, directly toward the shadows. She's here, isn't she? He choked. The Clarke woman. The one Yoon wants. Everything stopped. Joon-Seok went completely still. The temperature on the rooftop seemed to drop. What did you say? He said. Not a question, barely a whisper, which was somehow the most frightening version of his voice she'd heard yet. Daniel told me, the man stammered. He said if I could confirm she was with you, the Shin group would... Who else did you tell? Just the contact. Joon-Seok turned. His eyes found her in the dark like he'd always known she was there. Come out, he said. She stepped out of the shadow. They looked at each other across the rooftop pool. The city lights below, wind moving between them. He knows about me, she said. Yes. This stopped being about the keycard a long time ago. Yes. What's going to happen to him? Joon-Seok looked at her. Then, go to your room. That's not an answer. Go to your room, Sarah. She went. She stood in the elevator with her back against the wall, and one thought running underneath everything else like cold water. I'm already inside this. I have been since the moment I opened that door. He came to her room an hour later. She opened the door before he finished knocking. You're a criminal, she said. Yes. Not gray area. Not, I know some people. That man was terrified of you. He should be. You're not even a little ashamed of that. He sold out 3 of mine, Joon-Seok said. The flatness in his voice wasn't cruelty. It was something older. He made a choice. There are consequences. So that's just normal to you. People being taken away. Violence is paperwork. It's the world I operate in. And you chose that world. Something moved in his jaw. That's a more complicated sentence than you think. Then uncomplicated. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for just a moment, one fraction of a second, something slipped. Not the composure, something behind it, something that had been carrying weight for a very long time. Not tonight, he said quietly. It wasn't deflection. It was the sound of a man who genuinely didn't have the capacity for that particular truth in that particular moment. She heard the difference. Fine, she said, but eventually, he nodded once. Daniel knows you're here, he said. I'll have someone outside your door tonight. Tomorrow I explain everything. You keep saying that. Tomorrow I mean it. He left. She locked the door and stood in the dark for a long time. Comment right now. Should she have run the moment she saw what happened on that roof? Or was it already too late? Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Morning. Decision made. Leaving. Packed her carry-on. Called the front desk. Was reaching for her jacket when the door opened. Keycard, no knock. And 2 of his security team stepped in. And behind them, Joon-Seok. You were going to leave without telling me, he said. I was going to leave, she said. The telling you part felt optional. It isn't. Then here's me telling you. I'm leaving. Bye. Your grandmother, he said. Maternal side. Before she married your grandfather, her name was Obi Takahashi. Sarah went still. She was Korean, brought to Nigeria in the 60s. She married an Igbo man, dropped the Korean name, but she kept documents, records, a land transaction from 1967. Why are you telling me this? Because Daniel Yoon has been searching for those documents for 3 years. He didn't enter your life by accident. He entered it because your grandmother's records connect to a land dispute worth $400 million currently before a Seoul court. The room tilted slightly. Marcus, she said slowly. Did Marcus know? Marcus was paid to stay with you. Silence. From the beginning, Joon-Seok said. The words went in slowly, deliberately, like something cold administered carefully so the shock didn't kill the patient outright. From the beginning, every dinner, every quiet morning, every time Marcus had looked at her like she was the most interesting woman in any room he'd ever stood in. Paid. Everything, she said. Her voice was very controlled. Everything was... Not everything, Joon-Seok said. He sat across from her. No distance this time. Your talent is real. Your designs are real. What they did to you is not a reflection of your work. I said don't comfort me. I'm giving you facts. Then give me this fact. Why should I believe anything you say? You're a criminal who runs networks that people get killed in. Why is your version of my life more true than anyone else's? He went still, not the practiced stillness. Something caught off guard. That's a fair question, he said. I know it is. I can't make you trust me, he said. I won't try, but I can show you the files. My team's research. Every document. You can verify every word independently. She looked at him. How long have you known about me specifically? Since the night you walked through my door. And before that, did you know I existed before that night? A pause, one beat too long. Han Joon-Seok. I knew the name Clarke was connected to the documents, he said carefully. I didn't know who Clarke was until that night. But if you had known, she stopped, would you have come to find me? He looked at her steadily. Yes, he said, but not the way Daniel did. How do I know that? You don't, he said. Not yet. She hated that it was the most honest thing he could have said. Show me the files, she said. He assigned 2 guards. She named them Thursday and November immediately, told them so directly. They responded with the same neutral expression, and she decided she liked them. She was not technically a prisoner. She could move within the hotel, as long as Thursday and November came with her. She should have been furious. She was in intervals. This is surveillance, she said on the second afternoon. Protection. You keep using different words for the same cage. It's not a cage. Thursday follows me to the spa, Joon-Seok. He stood outside while I got a facial. How is that not a cage? He stood outside the building, not the room. Oh, well, in that case, Sarah. No. She put her sketchbook down. You don't get to just end my sentences with my name like that closes the argument. I am a grown woman who has operated her own business, managed her own life, navigated her own crises, long before I walked into your room. I do not need a babysitter. You need someone who can stop a trained operative from putting you in a car, he said, which is a different thing. Then teach me, she said. He blinked, just barely. What? Teach me. How to read a room, what to look for, how to know when something is wrong before it's too late. She held his gaze. Because I refuse to spend however long this lasts being stored in a hotel room, like something valuable and fragile. Either include me or I'll figure it out myself, and I promise you that's a worse option for everyone. He looked at her for a long moment. You're serious. I'm always serious. He adjusted his cuff, looked out the window, then back at her. And after dinner, he said, we'll walk the lobby, I'll show you what I see. She hadn't expected him to actually agree. She tried not to show that. Fine, she said. They walked the lobby at 8 p.m., and he stood just behind her shoulder and spoke quietly into her ear and told her what he saw. The man near the concierge who'd been there too long. The woman at the bar who hadn't touched her drink. The configuration of exits and sight lines in the 3 places in the lobby where a person could stand and see everything without being seen. She listened. She asked questions, sharp ones. He answered them, without condescension, without performing patience, like she was someone worth the information. You're good at this, he said at one point. I've been reading rooms full of people who wanted things from me for 4 years, she said. I just didn't know what I was reading. Something moved in his face. What do you mean? Design showcases, investor meetings, every room where someone smiled at me and wanted something I had. She paused. I was reading them. I just thought it was regular social anxiety. Turns out I was right about all of it and just didn't trust myself. He was quiet for a moment. You should have trusted yourself, he said. Yes, she agreed. I should have. They stopped near the window. Seoul below, the river beyond. My mother painted, he said, unprompted. Sarah turned to look at him. She died when I was 17. Before that, she said control was a grief response, that people who needed to control everything were people who had lost something they couldn't stop losing. Was she talking about you? My father. But I understood her more than he did. He looked at the window. I'm working on it. Are you? She said. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've just gotten better at disguising it. He looked at her. A flash of something crossed his face. Not anger, not quite. Something raw. Something that didn't have a name in the vocabulary of a man who had spent 20 years making sure nothing surprised him. That's, he started. True, she said. A long beat. Yes, he said finally, quietly, like the word had to travel a long distance to get out. Probably, she nodded. Still working on it then, she said. He looked at her for a moment, something different in his eyes now, something that hadn't been there before. Not gratitude exactly, something closer to recognition. Still working on it, he agreed. Third night, phone buzzed, security alert. Then Thursday knocked hard. She grabbed her sketchbook before she was fully awake. Service stairwells, biometric door, safe room, no windows, reinforced door, clean and furnished in the way of someone who had thought carefully about making a panic room feel like a place a person could breathe. Joon-Seok was already there. He looked at her the moment she entered. One comprehensive sweep, and something in his posture released slightly when he confirmed she was unharmed. Shin Group, he said before she could ask. 3 operatives, service elevator. They know you're here and why that might matter to me. They'd use me. Yes. She sat down, pressed her hands flat. Are you afraid? He asked. Yes, but also angry. And anger is more useful. What are you angry about? That I have spent 3 days hiding because a man I thought loved me and a man I thought was my friend decided I was a transaction, she said. I'm angry that I'm still paying for choices other people made. That's righteous anger, he said. Don't validate me right now. Why not? Because if you're kind to me right now, I'll fall apart and I can't afford that. He sat across from her. When I was 22, he said, I told my father I was taking over his operation. He laughed, called me a child playing at being hard. He looked at her steadily. 3 months later, I'd restructured everything, doubled the revenue, removed every person working against us from the inside. Well, he didn't laugh after that. Why are you telling me that? Because that anger you just described is what it sounds like when someone decides they're done being underestimated. You're telling me to use it. I'm telling you that you already know how. His lieutenant appeared. Rapid Korean. He listened, stood. Back within the hour, he said. Thursday in November, stay. Where are you going? To handle this. She stood. Joon-Seok. He paused. Be careful, she said, real and unguarded. Too late to pull back. He looked at her for a moment. I'm always careful, he said. That's not the same as safe. No, he said. It isn't. He left. 53 minutes. He came back and his shirt had a cut across the sleeve, and she crossed the room before she decided to. You're hurt, she said. Minor. Sit down. I don't. Sit. He sat. Thursday produced a first aid kit. She waved him out. The door closed. Just the two of them in the low light in the muted city. She cleaned the cut. Her hands moved carefully, steady the way hands get when there's no room for anything else. Then she stopped and looked at him. You made a mistake tonight, she said. He went still. What? Something went wrong out there. This, she gestured at his arm, doesn't happen when things go according to plan. What happened? A muscle jumped in his jaw. It was handled. That's not what I asked. Sarah, what happened? He looked at her. But the composure was there. It was always there. But underneath it, something tight, something that hadn't fully resolved. I made a judgment call, he said finally, about which route they'd take. I was wrong. And one of my men took a hit because of it. The words came out flat, but there was something underneath them that wasn't flat at all. He's fine, but he took it because I read it wrong. She looked at him. You don't do that often. No, he said. I don't. But tonight you did. Tonight I was... He stopped. Distracted, she said quietly. He looked at her. Neither of them said anything for a moment. I don't make mistakes like that, he said. And there was something in his voice she hadn't heard before. Not quite anger, not quite vulnerability. The sound of a man confronting something about himself he didn't have a prepared response for. You're human, she said. It happens. Not to me, especially to you, she said, because you've convinced yourself it can't, which means when it does, you're not prepared to handle it. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite name. You're very direct, he said. You keep being surprised by that, she said. You should stop being surprised by that. She finished the bandage. She should have moved back. The work was done. She didn't move back. Are you okay? She said. Not about the cut. I've been doing this 20 years. That's not what I asked. Silence. No, he said. Not always. Why do you keep me here? She said quietly. I know the official reasons, but that's not all of it. You argued with me, he said. Who, the first night? Terrified, and you argued anyway. That's not a reason to. Everyone in my world performs, he said. Everyone calculates. Every conversation is a negotiation. I can see the architecture of before it ends. He looked at her hands. You don't perform. You just are exactly what you are. Angry when you're angry. Real when you're real. You said be careful to me like you meant it and couldn't stop it. That's not a small thing, he said. In my life. Her fingers were still resting near his arm. Neither of them moved. The room felt smaller. Not uncomfortably. Completely. Just this. Low light. The space between them narrowing without either of them visibly stepping. His gaze dropped. Just for a second. Her lips. Back up. She felt it like a match strike. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Yes, he said. Neither stepped back. The silence stretched. Then his phone buzzed on the table between them. He didn't look at it. She almost did. Almost. And then his hand moved. Slow. Deliberate. It came up and curved against the side of her face, and she felt the warmth of it. This man who ran so cold, like something she'd been waiting for without knowing she was waiting. She leaned in, pulled back. 1 inch. Just 1 inch. His eyes stayed on hers. Patient. Absolutely still. Letting her choose. Choose, she thought. For once in this whole wreckage, choose something for yourself. She kissed him. 1 full second, he was perfectly still. Present, making sure she meant it. Then he kissed her back. Careful and thorough, and restrained in the way that was more devastating than urgency, because it meant he was paying full attention. Went like she was something worth understanding completely. When they broke apart, neither spoke. She stayed close. His thumb moved once against her cheekbone, barely there. Then his hand lowered. I know what I am, he said, voice different now, quieter. I'm not asking you to forget it. I know what you are, she said. I've examined it from every angle. You're dangerous. Some of your choices I'll never agree with, and I'll tell you every time. Then, but you've never lied to me, she said. Not once. You've been exactly what you are from the first second. He looked at her. I don't have a clean version to offer you. I'm not asking for clean, she said. I'm asking for real. Something underneath his composure finally surfaced. Not the mask falling. Something being allowed through it. That, he said quietly, I can give you. 4th morning. She made a mistake, slipped out before Thursday woke. Not to run, just to walk. 1 block. Real air. 10 minutes. Half a block from the hotel entrance. The black car pulled up. Tinted windows. Seoul plates. The door opened. Daniel Yoon. Groomed. Measured. Professionally warm. But the warmth was a room with all the furniture removed. Perfect walls, nothing inside. You've made a very expensive mistake, Sarah, he said. Calm, unhurried. The voice of a man who had already mapped every exit. I don't think I have, she said. Han Joon-Seok is not a safe harbor. He's a man who uses people until they're no longer useful. Interesting perspective from the man who paid my fiancée to keep me distracted for 4 years. Something moved behind his eyes. The documents are mine. You've known that for 3 years. And instead of coming to me, instead of one honest conversation, you built a lie so elaborate it had its own supporting cast. She held his gaze. So don't talk to me about safe harbors. Get in the car. No. Sarah. No. 2 men stepped from the alley to her left. She ran. Lungs burning. No grace. Just survival. Half a block. A hand caught her arm. She turned to fight. Thursday, November was already moving on Daniel's men. 2 more of Joon-Seok's team materialized from a doorway she hadn't seen. Daniel's men stopped. Daniel looked at Thursday, then at Sarah, recalculating, patient. The second file, he said, quietly, just to her. Ask him about the second file, Sarah. Ask him what your grandmother's partner left behind. She went cold. What? But Daniel was already getting back in the car. It drove away. While she stood on the pavement, Thursday's hand on her arm, Seoul moving around her like nothing had happened. Take me back inside, she said. He was in the lobby. She got there first. Don't what? Don't stand there like nothing happened. I know. But Daniel said something. She looked at him directly. He mentioned a second file and your grandmother's partner. Something moved across Joon-Seok's face. Fast, controlled, gone in under a second. But she saw it. What does he mean? She said. What second file? We should talk upstairs. We should talk right here. Sarah, right here, she said, because that look on your face just told me that whatever Daniel said, it's not nothing, and I'm done being the last person to know things about my own life. He held her gaze for a long moment. Your grandmother's documents, he said carefully, are not the only things she left. There are records we haven't been able to locate. Records that may involve a second party who co-signed the original land transaction in 1967. A partner? Yes. And you knew about this partner? A beat? Yes. And you didn't tell me. I didn't think it was relevant until... Everything about my grandmother's life is relevant to me, she said. Everything. Don't decide what I need to know. His jaw tightened. You're right. Send me the documents, she said. All of them. Tonight. All of them, he agreed. The next 48 hours moved fast. Joon-Seok's lawyers filed. Daniel's team countered. Seoul courts moved at a different speed when the right names were attached. Daniel sent 3 messages. She read them once, gave them to Thursday. Marcus called. She answered, because she needed the door to close properly. Sarah, don't. I'm sorry, I didn't know it would go this far. You knew enough, she said. You knew every single time you looked at me, and you did it anyway. A long silence. Is it true, he said, that you're staying with him? I'm staying where I need to be, she said. Goodbye, Marcus. She ended the call. She sat with the silence for a moment. Then she opened her sketchbook. The evening before the court confirmation, Joon-Seok knocked. 3 taps. Patient. Walk with me, he said. The roof, the pool, his soul burning below them. After this resolves, he said, you can go. You're letting me go? The choice is real now. The threat diminishes once the court confirms you're standing. So I'll be safe. Safer. You want me to leave. I want you to choose, he said. Without the threat, without the fear, a real choice. She looked at the city. She thought about her studio, her sketchbooks, the midnight blue dress, the life she'd been building before it came apart. She thought about the last week, walking into the wrong room, a man with a gun who didn't fire it, Yolof Rice, a gallery. I'm working on it. A mistake he admitted, a kiss that had felt more honest than 4 years of something built around her without her knowledge. I'm tired of safe lives that break me, she said. He went still. That's not an answer, he said. It is, she said. She turned to face him. The safe life had Marcus. The safe life had Daniel. 4 years of being somebody else's plan while I thought I was building my own. What I'm offering isn't... I know what you're offering, she said. You're dangerous. The people around you are dangerous. Some of your choices. I'll tell you every time I disagree, and you'll listen. That's not optional. Agreed, he said quietly. And I'll fight for my independence every single day. I'm counting on it. And if this goes wrong, she said, I won't survive your world. He didn't answer, because they both knew that was true. And the silence wasn't comfortable. It was honest. The weight of a real choice made with open eyes. He reached out and his hand found hers at the railing. Not a grip, not a claim, a question. She turned her hand over and held it back. 3 days later, the court confirmed her standing. Daniel's counterclaim was rejected. He flew to Tokyo that night. The midnight blue dress arrived in her room via courier she hadn't sent. A note. It belongs with you. She hung it in the closet and stood looking at it for a long time. She didn't check out. She set up a proper workspace, sketchbooks across the desk, better light. She started designing again, The kind that came from something broken open and rebuilt into a different shape. She and Joon-Seok fell into something without a clean name. There were days his phone rang and his face became the rooftop version. Flat, unreachable, and she learned to give him room and wait. There were evenings where neither of them spoke, and it was the most accompanied she'd felt in years. There were arguments, real ones. "You did it again," she said one evening. "Did what?" "Made a decision about my safety without the conversation. The threat was real." "The threat is always real with you. That doesn't mean I forfeit the conversation." He adjusted his cuff, looked at her. "You're right. Simple, no deflection." "I know," she said, and she sat beside him and picked up her sketchbook and let the evening settle around them. 6 weeks after she walked through the wrong door, Sarah Clarke walked into room 4140 again, not by accident. She used her own keycard, opened the door, cedar and city light. He was at the window, no gun, just him. Jacket off, tattoos catching the light, soul spread out behind him. He turned. "Still here?" he asked. She set her sketchbook down, kicked off her shoes, crossed the room. She stopped in front of him. "Eric, you walked into the wrong room," he said. She shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I walked into the only one I was ever meant to find." He looked at her. Everything he was and wasn't, and everything she'd chosen with open eyes. He pulled her in. His phone buzzed. He didn't move at first. She felt him go still. Then he pulled back, just enough, and looked at the screen. One look, and for the first time since she'd met him, through guns and rooftops and violence he handled like administration, she saw something move across his face she had never seen there before. Not just concern, not just calculation. Fear, real fear, brief, controlled, gone in under a second. But she saw it. "What is it?" she said. He looked up at her, then back at the screen. "They found the second file," he said. Her blood cooled. "What second file?" He looked at her and something shifted in his expression. The thing she'd been slowly learning to read underneath his composure. This wasn't just information. This was the specific look of a man confronting something he had hoped, deeply and privately, would never surface. "Your grandmother's partner," he said. "What about them?" "They're alive, Sarah." She stared at him. "The partner who co-signed that transaction in 1967, he said, didn't disappear. They built something significant." "Who is it?" He held her gaze for a long moment. "My father," he said. The room went absolutely silent. The city burned below them, indifferent and magnificent and entirely unaware that everything had just changed. "Your father," she said slowly. "Which means," he said, this was never just about documents or land or $400 million. "Then what is it about?" He looked at her. "Us," he said. "It was always going to be us. I just didn't know your name yet. You need part 2. You already know that. Subscribe right now, drop a comment. Did Joon-Seok's father set this whole thing in motion? Is this bigger than any of them realize?" I read every single comment. See you in part 2.